Hello, everyone. I'd like to introduce my friend Joe Baltimore. Joe has just moved to Baltimore, Maryland. Joe is looking to find a new job in Maryland. Today, he's going to learn how to use the Maryland Workforce Exchange website to find his new job. First things first, Joe has to go to the Maryland Workforce Exchange website, which is mwejobs.maryland.gov. Either option one, if he thinks he may already have an account and needs to retrieve his username and update his password. Otherwise, he will select option two, create a user account. He will select create individual account, the leftmost option, and will read and agree to the equal opportunity privacy notices. Joe will have two choices, comprehensive registration or register with a resume. Joe is choosing comprehensive registration so he can add or create a resume later. If he already has a resume in electronic format, he will choose register with a resume. Now Joe is ready to create a username he can remember. Joe will also write down his username in a safe place to access later. To make sure he can log into his account at any time, Joe will also write down his password in a safe place. Remember, the password has to have 8 to 20 characters, 1 capital letter, 1 number, and 1 special character. Next, Joe needs to choose a security question and an answer he will remember in case he forgets his password. Joe should write this down. Joe will also need to create a 4-digit PIN number, which again, he should write down. Next, Joe will enter his social security number. Next, Joe needs to enter his primary location information. Next, Joe will add his email address. Next, Joe will enter his demographic information. Joe will now press next. Joe will now add his first name and last name. Joe will now enter his residential information. Now he will enter his mailing address. When Joe is done here, he will select Next. Joe will now enter his phone number. When he is done here, he will select Next. Joe will now select his preferred notification method. Next, Joe will enter where he is accessing the website. Joe will now select his citizenship information. Since Joe is a refugee, he will select alien/refugee lawfully admitted to the US. He will now enter his receipt number and alien registration expiration date. Now he will enter his disability information. Since Joe does not have a disability, he will select No, I do not have a disability. He will now select Next. Now, Joe will enter his education information. Joe has a high school diploma, so he will select high school diploma. Now, Joe will specify that he is not currently attending any school. Joe will now enter his employment information. Since Joe is not currently working, he will select Not Working. Joe will next enter the type of business he's worked in the past. Next, he will select that he is currently looking for work. Joe will now enter the termination question. Finally, he will enter the information for farm worker information. Joe will now enter his ethnic origin and his race. Now Joe will enter his language proficiency. Since Joe has a limited English proficiency, he will select Yes. Next, Joe will enter his primary language and how well he speaks that language. Next, Joe will select whether he needs English language assistance. Joe will select No. Now he will select how well he speaks English. Joe can speak and understand English well enough to communicate. Now, Joe will select Next. Joe will now respond accordingly to the military questions. Joe will now answer the public assistance questions. He will provide answers to the following questions if any apply within the last 6 months. Joe, has your household received temporary assistance for needy family payments? Joe, have you been determined eligible for or received supplemental nutrition assistance program assistance? Joe, have you received general assistance payments? Have you received refugee cash assistance payments? Have you been supported through the state's foster care system? When Joe is done, he will press finish.